There was a pulse. Paul continued to blow air into the man's mouth over and over again, and finally the man began to gasp on his own. Water and vomit came pouring out of him. Paul turned his head sideways, and the liquid he was ejecting mixed with the blood on the deck, washing some of it away. The man still seemed to be unconscious, though. Louise, soaking wet, almost naked, and still chilled from the water, was starting to feel quite self-conscious. She struggled back into her jumpsuit and zipped it up, Paul watching her, she knew, even while he pretended not to. It would still be a while before Dr. Montego arrived. SNO wasn't just 2 kilometers down, it was also 1.25 kilometers horizontally from the nearest elevator, at mineshaft number 9. Even if the lift cage had been at the top, and there was no guarantee it would have been, it would still take Montego 20-odd minutes to get here. Louise thought she should get the man out of his wet clothes. She reached for the front of his charcoal gray shirt, but there were no buttons and no zipper. It didn't appear to be a pullover, even though it was collarless, and there they were. Hidden snaps running along the tops of the broad shoulders. Louise tried to undo them, but they didn't budge. She glanced down at the man's pants. They seemed to be dark olive green, although they might have been much lighter if dry. But there was no belt. Instead, a series of snaps and folds encircled the waist. It suddenly occurred to Louise that the man might be suffering from the bends. The detector chamber was 30 meters deep. Who knew how far down he'd gone or how quickly he'd come up? Air pressure this much below Earth's surface was 130% of normal. At that moment, Louise couldn't figure out how that would affect whether someone got the bends, but it did mean the man would now be receiving a higher concentration of oxygen than he would have up top, and that surely must be to the good. There was nothing to do now but wait. The man was breathing, and his pulse had strengthened. Louise finally had a chance to really look at the stranger's face. It was broad but not flat. Rather, the cheekbones trailed back at an angle, and his nose was gargantuan, almost the size of a clenched fist. The man's lower jaw was covered by a thick, dark blonde beard, and straight blonde hair was plastered across his forehead. His facial features were vaguely Eastern European, but with Scandinavian rather than olive coloring. The wide-spaced eyes were closed. "Where could he possibly have come from?" asked Paul, now sitting cross-legged on the deck next to the man. "No one should have been able to get down here." "And," Louise nodded, "and even if he could, how could he get inside the sealed detector chamber?" She paused and brushed hair out of her eyes, realizing for the first time that she'd lost her hairnet while swimming in the tank. "You know the heavy water is ruined. If he survives this stunt, he'll face one heck of a lawsuit." Louise found herself shaking her head. Who could this man be, anyway? Maybe a native Canadian zealot? An Indian who felt the mining was interfering with sacred ground? But the man's hair was blonde, rare among natives. Nor was this a youthful prank gone bad. The guy looked to be about 35. It was possible he was a terrorist, or an anti-nuclear protester. But although Atomic Energy of Canada Limited had indeed supplied the heavy water, there was no nuclear work done at this site. Whoever he was, Louise reflected, if he did finally die from his injuries, he'd be a prime candidate for the Darwin Awards. This was classic evolution in action stuff. A person who did something so incredibly stupid, it cost him his own life.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.